You're watching Council Wrap Up. We're here with some of the top news of the Montgomery County Council for the month of June. Up first, the impacts of systemic racism are evident in Montgomery County's COVID-19 numbers, but those numbers go beyond the pandemic. This June, the council approved a resolution to declare racism a public health emergency. Councilmember Will Jawando says racism in our country and our county has become a public health crisis. At this week's council session, approval of a resolution spearheaded by Jawando and supported by the entire council to declare racism a public health emergency. He says there is systemic racism in all areas, ranging from healthcare to education, and that it's costing people their lives.
I think most people don't realize that if you look at health disparities, if you look at black women 3 times more likely to die in childbirth, you look certainly in the criminal justice arena. So you think about racism embedded in all these areas, and obviously COVID. 1 in 4 of the people killed here in Montgomery County from COVID are black.
Folks, if we can't get this right, if we can't understand that and acknowledge the challenges that still persist, we'll never be able to actually address the issues of George Floyd and all of the other things.
As an unapologetically proud Latina, and a mom to 2 fierce Afro-Latina young women, I stand with our Black brothers and sisters.
The resolution includes action steps that call for further work to enhance the council's commitment to address the impact racism has on the community.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it?
The measure comes as several hundred residents recently protested peacefully in Rockville, calling for justice for George Floyd, the Minneapolis resident who died at the hands of law enforcement.
It's not just a moral obligation for us to be focusing on these issues right now. It's also a public health imperative for everyone moving forward.
It's really going to improve the life of every county resident. It's not just about improving it for black or brown people. It's how do we maximize the potential of every human individual. I think it's compelling a lot of people to say, look, I can't stay on the sidelines anymore. I've got to get involved. I've got to be a part of it.
Along those same lines this month, there have been calls for actions to confront racial equity and social justice in the U.S., but here in Montgomery County, work is already underway to break down those barriers thanks to the forward thinking of our leaders. In December of last year, a major step in making equity a reality for residents of Montgomery County took place with the signing of the Racial Equity and Social Justice Law. And today, with the recent COVID-19 pandemic and the murder of George Floyd, the need for this commitment has grown even larger. The measure was spearheaded by Nancy Navarro, who was council president at the time the bill was introduced and approved.
This has been hundreds and hundreds of years in the making. And so I think it's so important for governments, in this case, local government, to literally be forced to examine data every time they're going to make a decision.
Of the Racial Equity and Social Justice Advisory Committee.
This week, the Government and Operations Committee received an update on the implementation of this law from staff, including Tiffany Ward,
Vision for a proactive response to community demands.
the newly appointed Chief Equity Officer, who provided information on the appointment of the Racial Equity and Social Justice Advisory Committee and the office response during the COVID-19 recovery.
She shared with us that in addition to all the components of the law that she has to put in place, she has received numerous invitations, of course, to talk to the community about what does racial equity mean and how can we make sure that Montgomery County is at the forefront of dismantling really years and years of historic institutionalized racism that is very much present in many of the processes, the institutions, the legislation, et cetera. So it's a pretty big task.
The committee is also looking at best practices to serve the community in this work to dismantle structural racism.
We discussed this idea of standing up a racial equity team to deal with the crisis at hand while Ms. Ward continues to work on all of the other pieces.
Beginning August 1st, the Council's Office of Legislative Oversight will be charged with submitting a racial equity and social justice impact statement for each bill that comes before the Council. The COVID-19 pandemic is affecting many people's state of mind, but some of the most vulnerable members of our community are our children. The Council has provided assistance for programs specifically designed to support our youth. The coronavirus pandemic has led to sudden changes to the lives and daily routines of children. They don't get to see their peers or play sports, and there are those children in Montgomery County who are living with food insecurity and negative home situations.
Right now, there's a lot of anxiety around what's to come. And so, like we had an episode on student transitions, and they're just kind of like feeling like, well, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen with next school year? A lot of what ifs, which then also tends to create this anxiety. And kids are trying to figure out ways of connecting with their peers.
To help students understand and manage their anxiety, Dr. Connolly began an MCPS television series called Waymaking, where the discussion focuses on everything from sleep management to racism.
Each person comes in with their vantage point of their area of expertise.
I know that like in the midst of crisis, kids exhibit stress in ways that may look different than what we're used to.
But the biggest thing is that there are families out there who need help, and that they're glad to come out and provide resources to them, because many families don't know what the resources are.
So if a family has concerns, they can contact their building principal. They can go.
And so this is a way of helping to promote what they do and then how to go and to get help.
And that stress has a physiological effect on those kids.
Councilmember Gabe Albornoz chairs the Council's Health and Human Services Committee. A father of four himself, he says he and his wife have kept the lines of communication open with their children.
We spend a lot of time listening, and I've noticed that my two older children have been spending a lot of time together, talking to each other well into the night. And we've let that go because we think it's so important for them to have that connection. And we are super affectionate with our little ones, which we know is helpful.
Though the pandemic has been a big upheaval in the lives of our young people, the council has recognized this with resources to provide help.
And so we also enacted legislation to provide additional support to our youth, because we know many of them are being exposed and to trauma at home, and by virtue of them not being able to leave, that's been exacerbated. And so we are appropriating funds to help make sure that those organizations have more resources to be able to do the work that we need done.
Break it down, crisis can mean danger, but it can also mean opportunity. And that what can we do to find the positive opportunities that come from each crisis event?
Next, this Montgomery County brewery made a decision that not only saved their business, but also helped their fellow craft beer makers from closing their doors for good during the COVID-19 crisis. Before Governor Larry Hogan shut down Maryland businesses in March,
we purchased all local ingredients for that beer.
Brendan O'Leary, who owns True Respite Brewery in Rockville, was noticing the coronavirus curve here in the United States was mimicking that of Italy.
You could see kind of the level of crisis that Italy was in. We took that to mean that was our future, and we said, what are we going to do when the tap rooms ultimately get shut down? So we decided collectively that the time was right to develop a platform for doing home deliveries.
That platform is BeerMe, a craft beverage delivery app that went live within 45 minutes of the governor's announcement. BeerMe took off like wildfire and is currently being used by dozens of breweries in 31 states for free. BeerMe offers craft beverage companies a vehicle to take online orders for delivery and carry out. O'Leary says through feedback he received, it was clear the app saved many businesses from closing down, including his own.
If we hadn't had a tool for selling home deliveries and doing curbside and contactless and keeping the beer flowing safely, I'm not sure what would have happened to our business, but that tool allowed us to keep our staff employed. Everyone who wanted hours here was getting hours. So our primary goal was pay rent, pay bills, keep everyone working.
So far, the app has generated more than $4 million in sales, which O'Leary says was his mission, to help his peers get through this crisis.
Bear, this label right here, our artists are just phenomenal.
As more states begin to reopen, O'Leary says they are preparing to begin monetizing BeerMe.
Hans, how are you, man?
True Respite opened its doors just 2 years ago.
Good to see you too. Welcome back.
Councilmember Hans Remer worked closely with O'Leary to obtain the necessary zoning changes that were needed to open this business.
This business here is helping this county reinvent commercial land use. If you look around outside, you see an old commercial center, single story, lots of office. Not a place for vibrancy and life and hanging out and having fun. But there's a lot of neighborhoods around here where people would love to have some place to go with their friends. And this business said, that's the perfect kind of location for us to be in.
O'Leary says he hopes the state's relaxed liquor laws that allow for Beer Me to operate will stay that way. But in the meantime, he's opened an outdoor beer garden.
They're going to go onto our website at beerme.com and then select a dine-in option. And then once they have that, you can see all of our beers on tap, and we'll just bring it right out to their table number.
Very easy, very quick, so no mistakes.
And is working hard to expand his business right here in Montgomery County.
It's a very community-oriented place. Depending on the day and the time, you might get a different crowd that you catch in here. We just installed a new 60-barrel tank, which represented almost a 30% capacity increase with that one tank. That tank alone holds almost 15,000 pints of beer. And we have it 3/4 full at the moment, and we're 3/4 filling it again for the next round. So we're almost at capacity again, even with that expansion. And we'd like to do more. Thank you, sir.
For more information about True Respite Brewery and hours you can visit, check out their website. And finally, good news for families across Montgomery County, as Montgomery Parks has begun reopening its playgrounds. But before you head out, there are a few things to take note of. There's no doubt the summer of 2020 will be one for the books, but beginning June 29th, some sense of normalcy will return for children here as Montgomery County Parks will begin reopening its playgrounds. But this won't happen overnight. There are 274 playgrounds across the county, and staff will be working around the clock to get those playgrounds open for those anxious county kids.
We need some time to be able to remove the fencing and clear away some of the boards with nails in them, things like that that have been used to wall those off. So I know people are eager and their kids are eager to get back on the swing sets and the slides, but we really need to ask for people to be a little bit patient with us as we spool back up to the point where we can have all the playgrounds available for use.
When you do return to your neighborhood playground, there will be a few simple etiquette requirements to keep in mind. Much of it is the same common sense advice for you and your children, like maintaining social distance. But there are some specific points park staff wants people to be aware of.
For example, if you're going to allow your kids to use the playground equipment, it's probably a good idea to bring some sanitary wipes, the kind of things that you would buy at the neighborhood grocery or drugstore or find. Don't try to find some heavy chemicals, bleach or solvents. Those are going to take the paint off of our equipment and could potentially damage it quite seriously.
Restrooms will begin opening at the playgrounds as well, and there will be more specific guidelines on requirements there in weeks to come.
We've learned some lessons from this experience that even when there's a vaccine developed, we're still going to have some things that are changed in the way that we go about designing park infrastructure to make sure it's as safe as possible.
Montgomery County kept its parks open during the pandemic, which was a lifesaver for many people who needed to get out of the house to enjoy those spaces when there were few other options. But now that kids and parents will be able to add a trip to the playground back into that daily routine, it does feel like life is somewhat normal again.
Nothing makes me more excited in this job than seeing people enjoying the parks. I love it. I love to go to a park and just watch people, how they're using it, that they're having a great time, that they're blowing off some steam, that they're socializing, that they're getting out and getting access to nature. That just really, it gets me out of bed in the morning. I declare this playground officially reopened.
For more information on reopening guidelines for the parks and playgrounds, visit their website. Well, that does it for this edition of Council Wrap Up. For more information on the County Council's work, visit their website.